Hey Morgan, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me today.
Linya, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, we go really very far back. We were both from
Way back.
DJing. We
Yeah.
went to Lodge as well. And I remember that you were the person who would go on stage and do like magic tricks, or you would be composing your own songs. So I knew even back then that you were very much into music, but during my research for this interview, I realized that you were actually exposed to music way before then, and you pushed your dad to give you piano lessons. Could you share that story on how you first got exposed to this?
Okay, so it's a kind of funny story. It's almost narcissistic. So I remember it was, I think, like I was 11 or 12. I was at a birthday party, and there was a boy playing the piano. Very rudimentary stuff. I think he was playing like chopsticks or something. And I just remember all the kids flocking to him, right? And it's a weird thing to say, but like I'm not ashamed to feel that. But at that moment, I was like, why is the attention not on me? And I think that kind of gave me the thirst for being in the spotlight. And then from there, it could have been anything. I just wanted some sort of attention. It's not that I'm not getting attention at home. I just felt like I wanted to do this, and I realized there are many ways to do it. And entertainment is going to be my calling. I sort of almost decided there and then, but I didn't make the big call until a lot later, until I realized I can actually do it.
Yeah. So why piano though, of all things, to push your dad for?
I know. I have no idea. It could have been violin. It could have been guitar. It could have been singing. Could have been like theater. I don't know. I think it was because that kid was playing the piano.
Yeah.
So I wanted to play the piano. Although my dad had a organ in our home, and he would stick little sticky notes on it, and he would write the notation on it, and I would just memorize it, not knowing really what it was, and he would sit and play. So basically, I was like, well, what that kid did, I can do at home, so I'll start practicing. And my dad was like, okay, well, I will get you a piano if you can play the theme of The Godfather in like 2 weeks. So he taught it to me on the organ, and lo and behold, I did it. Somehow I could, within 2 weeks, play with two hands. And my dad was like, oh crap, like this guy can actually play. And what, without knowing though, it was muscle memory. I was just watching him repeating it, like rote memory stuff. And then eventually he was like, okay, he bought me a secondhand piano, which is still in my house at the moment in Kuching. I think it cost him like 5,000 ringgit. And it was like a brown, surprisingly really good Yamaha piano. And then from there on, we made a deal. My dad was like, you can have piano lessons every week, an hour a week, and you need to make sure you're on top of your grades. So at the time, I was in Chunghwa number 3, right? So, and then we didn't have semesters or trimesters. We had exams every month. So if I didn't bring, so out of like, I think it was like 8 or 10 subjects. I wasn't very sure. I'm not really sure now. But the deal was, out of those, there needs to be 4 100s. It needs to be 4 papers that scored perfectly. Then I can continue the lesson for the month. And that was a time where I only got 3. So he actually canceled my classes for the month.
Oh no.
So for me, I'm like, what the hell? Like, are you serious? It's like, yeah, like we made a deal. You got to stick to your word. So I studied really hard the next month, and I got 5 more. And so it's almost like a trait between my dad was like academic and arts. So you got to uphold both. And I kind of just did that throughout my life. It sort of became a habit because I know it's a trade-off.
Yeah. And do you enjoy music? Because you then went on, you started learning, I remember, all kinds of different instruments, and then you end up being in the Rainforest World Festival as well. So what was music to you then?
Well, I sort of played the piano, and I realized I got to I'm not gonna, like, I don't want to brag, but I was pretty good. I was really comfortable with my skill. I got a diploma with ABRs and Trinity. I got a Trinity one, and then I realized that there are a lot of people better than me. I was like, it's like I practiced so hard, but there are still kids out there that are kicking my ass. Like, you're really good.
No, but what do you mean by better than you though? I mean, like, you mean like just improvising, or just, what do you mean
Not
by that?
improvising, just technique.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So when I watch them, they're playing things that are way harder like to understand. So the to me, the holy grail of classical music at the time was Fantasy Impromptu, right? The Chopin one, because of the weird timing and squeezing quintuplets, and I was just like, I don't really understand that part of music, because to me everything is grid like. So hence, dance and like more rock, and I wanted to learn jazz, and I knew I sucked at it. So I was like, I got to do something where I can carve my own lane, where I can be unique in a way that isn't the same to everyone else. So world music became some like my outlet. I realized I could be the educated one in world music, because world music was more informal training, right? So I started picking up the erhu. I started playing the didgeridoo. I started playing sort of like Somalian percussion, like the djembe. Then I started picking up the sape as well. Not really good at that because that technique is also really hard to get. But then I realized, if I can't be good at one thing, I'll just be okay at many things.
And how do you,
So,
yeah.
and
And
basically from there onwards, I became the kid that played everything, and then basically formed a band and played Rainforest. Yeah.
That's amazing. And then what's interesting for me is that, because I saw you doing all these instruments and I always thought you would naturally go into music, but then it turns out that when you went to Perth, you actually pursued business and finance rather than music. So what happened there?
Okay, so what happened there was, again, my dad forming a contract with me. So basically, I told him, we didn't do financially. We were not like the richest family so it was really difficult at the time. Like, my sister didn't get the opportunity to had the tertiary education like we wanted. We went to Swinburne for a little bit, and Swinburne Kuching as well, because Taylor University in Kuala Lumpur was way too expensive for us. And my sister managed to get a scholarship in Curtin as well, but the Miri one, and then I think she did Lim Kok Wing and Kale as well. But we just didn't have the money, so I had to do like a year in Swinburne in hopes that I could leave Kuching. That was always my plan, that if I can't do music, and if I want to do music, I cannot be in Malaysia. At least it's not where I want to see myself. I don't want to be a Malaysian music, as much as like it sounds like I'm disowning my country, but it's like I know for a fact that is not the market I want to be in. I want to be in the mainstream, westernized, media. That's where I kind of uphold myself to. So I knew that besides everything good, you have to be good at the stuff that your music that you're writing. You got to be presentable, and image and everything. I just knew step one was to get out first. So the way to get out was a scholarship, because we couldn't afford it. Eventually, I got it, so that almost helped financially with leaving Malaysia. So the option was London or UK or Australia, and I chose Australia because it was closer to home, and just in case, quote unquote, like I said to when shit hits the fan, I can always go back to Malaysia. But then I just somehow chose Perth because I thought it would be a huge cultural shock to me if I went to Sydney, and I knew that I should ease myself into new cultures a step at a time.
Yeah.
So basically, then I did Curtin, and then I went to 2 years in University of Western Australia to pursue a triple major in economics, finance, and commerce. And basically that was the story of how that happened, and that gave me my permanent residency. Without that piece of paper, I had to leave the country. I had to graduate.
So it's interesting that sorry, go on.
No, go on. Yeah, no, you
go.
So
that's interesting that you were clearly, like, you had this plan that you wanted to do music, but first you had to get out. But then I heard you say in another interview that you were at one point determined to be the best accountant there was. You were almost going to give up on music. So what happened then?
I realized the reality of life when I moved to Perth. So I remember the first day getting to Perth, I was like, oh shit, like this is so different than what I thought. I was like, this is just like I'm staying in a shitty dorm. It wasn't the glamour. I don't know why. I just thought the second I touched down into a Western country, I'm seeing Hollywood, but it wasn't Hollywood. It was Perth. So that was kind of the realization crashed into me, and I realized I had no piano there. I couldn't afford to buy musical instruments, and I was like, why did I learn the piano? I can't even ship that around. So every new place I gotta buy a new one. Then it was like, oh well, what am I gonna do? Like, what? How did I end up enjoying music? It's because I was good at it. So maybe if I could be really good at accounting or being a financial advisor, I might actually love it. So it's the other way around, like not finding my passion first, but developing the skill set to then produce a passion, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And but I had a friend at the time, his name is Trevor, and he lives in Perth. I'm so grateful for him.
Yeah.
He just almost like he lent me long term his Taylor guitar. And he
Well, that's
just
a
goes,
good
dude, take this, man.
guitar.
Yeah, it's a great guitar. Amazing too. It's the I had two guitars in Kuching and they were so bad. I bought the cheapest one because we couldn't afford it too. But he's like, dude, just take this. This is one of my it's mid-tier guitars. I don't want you to ever quit music. At least don't think about it. Do it as a hobby first. And then another friend lent me his keyboard. So it wasn't a piano, but it was a keyboard. And then yeah, from there on, they sort of kept that almost dying fire alive for about 2 years.
Yeah. And I think you went to
And
the department store and you bought like Logitech Express and you started experimenting as well.
I was like, okay, I can't play music. Maybe I can pretend like I can sound good. So maybe I can edit my. So the idea was to pretend I was good. So when I was recording, I needed somewhere to edit my work. So kind of like Photoshop for for models. So and I realized that quickly. I was like, wait, this is just what recording is. This is basically music production. So from there on, it kind of piqued my interest. I went from Logic to Reason, and then I bought Ableton, and that was kind of like my interest. I still use Ableton, and that's my primary audio software of choice.
Yeah. And I think at that time you were playing at weddings and like the Llama Bar, and then you got an EY internship as well, which you turned down.
Yeah,
Can you
it
tell us
was
that story?
it was EY, KPMG. I got one at JP Morgan too, and then a potential offer at Bloomberg in Singapore.
Wow.
Because I topped the unit, and it's like a thing for the third years. Your graduating unit, when you top it, you get an summer internship position, and then you kind of finish that, and you go straight into a paid full-time employment. But then I thought to myself, I was like, this is really like I already had my permanent residency at the time. I had the CPA gave me some points. I'm not officially a CPA yet because I didn't take the papers, and I realized I could stay in this country. So I realized that the thing I could do now is start waiting, or do some sort of odd job and try to nail this music thingy. And yeah, I called my dad. I told him I'm gonna turn down this internship, and he was like, "You are throwing your life away." I was like, no. Here's another contract for you. I was like, if I don't make money in music within a year, I'll go back to banking. I'll go back to the corporate world. So my dad goes, okay, fine, deal. And I was
Yeah.
like, right. I was like, I mean, you still have to be a filial Asian kid, right? You gotta. But then the longer I stay in Australia, the more individualistic I start to feel. The more I feel like it's my life. I want to take control of it.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, eventually, within 8 months, we got our first radio play, and then from there on, I was like, okay, we started touring, and then label deals started coming in. We had managers, and I was like, holy shit! Like I haven't looked back since.
Yeah. But before that, I think the genesis of Slumberjack was really at this thing called the Limelight DJ
Yeah.
Competition in 2012. So you won it and Fletcher won it the year before. And
Mm.
yeah, how do you even end up in this DJ competition that is so far from playing the piano? And
So yeah, so I was my girlfriend at the time. We were living together as students in UWA. We sort of just I was still mangling around, making like with music, making really, really shitty beats. Um, and then I just went to like a music store while we were just like on a weekend, and she came with me. And she saw a flyer. It says it's a DJ. It's like a side DJ competition for the main festival. It's called Stereosonic, and Calvin Harris and Tiesto and all the biggest names were playing. And the winner of this festival gets to of this competition gets to open the festival. So my girlfriend at the time was like, "Why not you just try it? Like, here's the flyer, try it." I was like, "Okay." So basically, she encouraged me, and I kind of took it the wrong way. I entered a DJ competition playing live.
Yeah. You didn't know what
I
DJing
didn't,
was.
no, I had no idea. I had no idea what DJing really was, and I didn't have the tools. So I had to kind of like, MacGyver my own thing. I just bought a couple of small little buttons and controllers, and like instead of an 88 key piano, I can only afford a 25 key. So that was one hand I was playing like lead melodies, and left hand I was playing chords on pads, and I was playing drums, and I was looping things. I created like a 35-minute set, and I practiced day in and day out. And I remember my girlfriend also at the time was helping me study for the exam I had to ace to get my permanent residency and my internship. So I had two things I wanted to gun, and that was like super hard. That was difficult 6 months there.
Yeah.
Eventually, I joined the competition, and I remember I got there late, and because I was like at the third heat, like the third slot, like 3 hours in, and I remember going to the second floor, and I looked down to the DJ that was playing, and I realized I'm doing something completely different from everybody else, and that's where I panicked. But then I had to do it anyway, and it impressed the judges, and eventually won it. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to win.
So what happened after that? Because you didn't meet Fletcher then, you met him in the 2012 Perth Dance Music Awards, right? And you were sussing each other out. So what was that like?
Yeah, it was hilarious because the guy who actually ran the festival, ran the competition, introduced us to each other. He was like, "Morgs, get here. Like, I want to introduce you to last year's winner. His name is Fletcher." I shook his hand, and we kind of like threw some jokes. I was like, "Oh, like I took your crown." And he's like, "Nah, man, I've been doing this longer than you." And it just became a joke. So, and because of that, we took a photo. It was really funny. It's still a pretty iconic photo. We took it in front of like a what do you call that thing? Like an event billboard type thing with all the brands and icons and logos in the back on the red carpet. And then from there, we thought it was nothing. Got each other's numbers, and then 4 months later, I texted him. I was like, "Do you want to make music together? Like, because I heard that you produce now too." He goes, "Yeah, I've been producing for a while." I was like, "Okay, we're gonna come over to my house," and I got a little tiny studio set up, with like speakers and just my laptop. Like, I know music theory. I was like, "You know how to produce, but you don't know music theory, so maybe there's synergy there." And yeah, eventually it became a project that we both thought was going to be one off. So we just called it Slumberjack randomly. We didn't think it was going to be as big as it is. We just thought it was a one-off. We're going to put out an EP, 3 tracks, and call it a day and go back to our own solo musical projects.
Yeah. And your EP then was like very much like a solo, slow emo kind of music, and you used that.
Yeah, it was kind of like lo-fi, hip-hop, experimental, not heavy dance, not pop, nothing shimmery and high definition. It was really low definition. And almost it's like lo-fi to me is some sort of like a mask for my lack of skill at the time. I kind of used as a guise, as like it's easier to produce lo-fi music than hi-fi music. So that was kind of our approach. And then from there on, the guy who introduced us, the person who ran the competition, started managing us. Yeah. And then we had to go to this. He proposed that we go over to Sydney for this thing called the Electronic Music Conference. So it's like I guess it's like any conference, like a doctor's conference or like a accountant's conference for like the latest and greatest. So for musicians. So we went there, mingled around, and met our first label. So that was One Love Records. And at the time, these guys were a huge label in Australia. They were signing guys like Tiger Lily, again, like Calvin Harris. They were doing Tiesto. And this label was also responsible for putting on Stereosonic, the very festival that put on the competition, you know? So it's kind of like just came full circle. And I remember though, no one liked our music.
Oh no.
We brought our USB over and showed it to all the executives of the different record labels. And everyone just like, I can see potential in this, but it's not our cup of tea. And usually most artists will have a story to come out of that and go like, you know, screw you guys, like, and then eventually they like your music. But no, they were right. We sucked. And because of that, it kind of just motivated me a lot more. Like playing music and on the piano was very different from producing music.
Like looking back now, why do you think it was so terrible?
I just lacked the skill. Also, I had some sort of I was just naive, you know. I thought because of what I can do on the piano and on like knowing music theory, I could write a song that could compel people to listen to it. But it's a lot harder than that. Even now, I'm still learning. You know, to write a good pop song is one of the most difficult things in the world, and pop gets such a bad reputation because it's popular, right? And all the cool kids are like, I don't like popular music, but it's not that. Popular music is only popular because it's catchy, and you know, writing an earworm is the hardest thing. So basically, from that feedback we got, we hunkered down and had to study. But it's not like when we studied, you know, classical music when we in Kuching. It's so different. It's no one is there to teach you about this stuff. So my only teacher was trial and error, listening to other artists, trying to copy them, understanding structure and not really thinking there's one, you know, trying to have my own little blueprint. Yeah, and eventually we just got better and better.
Yeah, I think you were spending like a year copying Skrillex and then Timbaland and just like finding out it wasn't your sound. So
Yeah.
that's what's interesting is that when you said it wasn't your sound, you happen to also have synesthesia. So you
Yes.
interpret sound in a very different way, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you eventually find that Slumberjack sound?
So for me, this Slumberjack sound has to taste like elderflower syrup or like red candy. Like just if it's like a red colored candy or elderflower syrup, I know that the track is in the ballpark. It's about there. Regardless, it could be a soft song that we're writing, like a ballad or like a pop bouncy song, or a heavy, like sweaty bass aggressive song. It still has to taste like those, you know. And I discovered I had synesthesia with my sister when we were kids, even before music. She has synesthesia too, and also the same. So hers is same as mine, which is auditory and taste. So I remember her. We were like 6, and we were hiding behind a couch playing hide and seek, and we were hiding from no one, but we just hid. It's not, no one was seeking us. We just both hid behind the couch against the wall. And she told me, "Oh, that TV sound um, feels like rambutan on my tongue." And I was like, I don't really taste rambutan, but I can feel it's a round thing with spikes on it, similar, right? And my sister was like, "Yeah, it's so weird." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's not though, because me and you have it, so everyone has it. Like we were 6, you know. I thought everybody had it." And throughout the time, we've just been always talking about that sound. My sister goes, "Ugh, that sounds so sour." You know, that's like a word we would use. Well, I go like, "Why does that sound taste gooey?" And yeah, so that eventually I realized it was synesthesia until I didn't realize until I came to Australia. People told me like that's synesthesia, you know, that's not a
Yeah.
normal thing.
So did you find that kind of synesthesia when you went for your first gig, which was actually a live show, or is it like a process?
No, like synesthesia only works sort of when I'm writing music.
Oh.
I think the adrenaline and the dopamine, it's way too strong for me to have any more senses in my body when I'm on stage. The rush is just so high, you know, it's so strong. Like I
So,
don't really taste anything on stage.
So tell us, like you were saying that, you know, you produced this EP and everyone's rejecting, and then you started still doing gigs. So what was that process? Like, how do you end up being able to perform in front of a crowd when everyone was rejecting you?
We were playing for free. we 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 have an agent at the time, and this agent is still our agent to this day. He signed us purely on goodwill and faith. He was like, I can see you both are hungry, you know, I'll start booking shows for you. And he wasn't even in the electronic music conference. He found us on SoundCloud on, you know, on the basis of our 3 really shitty tracks. And he sent us an email. He's like, are you guys going to be in Sydney this weekend for the conference? I was like, yes, we are. And he goes, I want to meet you guys, but I'm not a delegate in the conference. Would you take an hour out during lunch and meet me at the cafe near this stadium? Or the I think there was like a museum that we were doing it in, like a theater. So we did. We left. We went to a cafe and talked to him over a beer, and signed to someone that wasn't usually dabbling in electronic music. He usually signs rappers and rock bands. So he's notorious for working with Silverchair, which is one of Australia's biggest, most iconic rock bands. So the idea that Fletcher and I signed to him was because we realized no one liked this at the conference. I might as well start working with people that actually likes me and believes in me. So we signed with him. It was a handshake deal, and then he got us a bunch of free shows for us to put our name out there to eventually sort of understand how the live music business works and what works on a dance floor. That was the important thing, is that we were forced to go to the dance floor and play our music and realize that no one was dancing. So it made us ask the important questions, you know? What makes people dance? And till this day, it's still an enigma to me, but I just get better at it, you know? Out of 10 songs, like 8 would make you dance. 2 would make you be like, what the hell is this? You know, so it was the pressure.
And it's not common to start off with live shows, right? Normally you would DJ and then transition to live shows.
To live, yeah. So we started live first because we were like, people are gonna appreciate us more. This is gonna, you know, it's way cooler because at the time Disclosure was huge, and they're still big now. We kind of modeled our live show after them with the little money we had. So we bought, like, again, miniature keyboards that could fit into a massive backpack because we don't have roadies, no money for that. No money for big keyboard, because you have a big keyboard when you fly around the country, you have to pay for luggage and, you know, oversized baggage and stuff like that. So none of that worked for me. And we were just poor kids. It was just like, we want to have a live show, so we'll buy shitty secondhand equipment and try to perform it. And I think our first paid gig was $300.
How long?
And I was like, this was probably after the first free tour, I think, like 3-4 weeks after we signed. No, we were already doing, the second we signed, we were doing like a show a week, 2 shows a week, and then 3, and then eventually like, okay, first paid gig, they're like $300. I was like, holy shit, this is way more than I've ever seen come in a single check, you know? Because I was working for $21 an hour. I'm about to get $150 in an hour. And Fletcher and I are like, we need to up our game. We need to start playing live, like even more. And we thought $300 was a lot. So we started buying more stuff and realized the $300 disappeared like that again. And then we realized, like, okay, this is silly. Let's sell the equipment and be, you know, financially smart now. We're both business students. We should know this. This is how you run a business. Let's not be, you know, reckless rock stars, quote unquote, again, and manage our money well. So DJing was the cheaper option and also easier. And at the time, when you're not big enough, the fans don't care, you know? So we just had to learn DJing from the ground up.
Yeah. And before 2014, when you released Felon, which kind of changed your fortunes, you actually met this person called Mr. Carmack, who helped you to define your Slumberjack sound. So how could you share?
He was the what do you call it? Like the seed. That was like a point in Slumberjack history that I could see was really clear. So it was 2014. Mr. Carmack was touring the world, and one of the benefits of being in Perth is that there's not, at the time, there wasn't a lot of producers. So when Mr. Carmack's in town from LA, he wanted a place where he can work on music, to hang out, smoke weed. It's legal in LA. Um, and he basically hit up a bunch of SoundCloud people, and one of my friends from Die High Records, it's a defunct label now, was like, Mr. Carmack is coming to Perth and he wants to hang out. Can we all hang out at your house? And I was really lucky at the time because I was with a couple of friends and we all pulled in together to sort of have like this really amazing penthouse, but for measly money. We managed to, 5 of us living together, so 2 couples and a single girl, and we managed to get a penthouse. And I converted the theater room into a music room because the other guy who lived with me also enjoyed music. So Mr. Carmack came around and I showed him a demo version of Felon. It was terrible. And so he sat down, he goes like, okay, here's what I will do. I'll show you what I'll do. Because I hope you're a fast learner, because this is just how I work. And he showed me a bunch of technique, basically stripping everything I knew about music theory and production that I've learned on YouTube. This guy basically told me to trust my instincts. I just need to have to up my level. My technicality was wrong, but my vision was correct. So we kept working on that until 4 a.m. I remember we had Famous Amos cookies and warm milk because he was so stoned, and then he got the munchies, so he started eating, and then he left back to his hotel at 5 in the morning, and then Fletcher came to look at the project again, and then was like, this is something that we need to capitalize on, what we learned today. And yeah, we took that lesson, literally like a 2-3 hour crash course that defined our sound. So we put out Felon, we uploaded on Triple J Unearthed, which is Australia's one of Australia's largest indie stations, and they played it on air. And I was so shocked. I remember I was driving on a highway when I heard it, and I had to pull aside. I was like, what? This is a prank. I was like, I thought my Bluetooth was on my phone. I thought the aux was in, but no, the presenter announced this. And then other DJs in Australia started tweeting about us and started talking about us and going like, they did the same thing. Another guy actually said on air that he had to stop his car, pull over, and go like, what is this, crazy music that these kids are putting out? And eventually Skrillex started playing it, and the same song, and Madeon, just a bunch of DJs started emulating the sound and playing it in their live shows across the world.
That's amazing.
And that's when I realized, like, okay, I don't have to be an accountant. Thank you.
So what's really interesting for me is that your first EP went out and it was like, it got 3,000 plays, and you've said all this, the Felon really got a lot of traction and there were over 50,000 plays. Was it really because of just the music and approach that you guys took? Would you contribute that to the success of
Like,
Felon?
you mean in terms of like the plays on SoundCloud?
Yeah, I mean,
no,
just
I
in terms of
so.
how people took to it.
I think it was radio. It was just radio support was important, and also, yeah, like I guess in some ways the grassroots underground support was really important too. SoundCloud really helped us a lot.
Yeah,
SoundCloud made it so easy to share your music everywhere else, and at the time it was not Spotify, there was no Apple Music. You just sent a link. You literally could make music right now, finish it, upload it, and be published technically, right?
Yeah.
So from there, it's like we got this underground fan base of just kids, like in Perth, in Sydney, and America, and yeah, it attributed to a lot of that. So like radio would listen to our music and go like, oh, okay, so they have like a little small cult following, so there must be something there, right? So there's like, it's some sort of like a validation from a small group of people. So there has to be something going on there. And also kind of gave me the direction. It made me feel like I'm doing something right.
Yeah. And after you got all that, did you feel like you knew where you wanted to go? How were you going to leverage?
I still have no idea. I kind of firmly believe in like taking it a step at a time now. Yeah. I sort of have a plan. I believe in planning for the future, but living in a moment.
Yeah. So how do you leverage
Paradoxical.
on the success of Felon then? Because after
Oh,
that, like towards the end, you were like appearing constantly on Triple J. You were getting like 2.5 million like here plays on SoundCloud. Like you were really,
yeah.
really getting a lot of traction. So how were you
The
building on that?
capitalization was basically just keep writing good music.
Yeah.
It's I realized it's also like a double-edged sword, you know, when you have a song that successful, your next project could cripple you, like
Yeah.
mentally as a musician,
Yeah.
because you are under this pressure now. But we didn't feel it at the time because social media was kind of crazy at the time, but it's not as rampant as it is now. So we're not really looking into validation. We're still kids that just got a radio play, right? And at the time, before Felon was even out, we've already worked on a couple of projects based on the same, techniques that we've learned. So then we just start putting them out, and people go like, "Wow, these guys are consistent." So we'll start supporting them, and words just keep spreading and spreading and spreading.
So
Yeah,
what?
so that helped.
So then, I mean, like you build on that, and then I think the next big milestone for you guys was in 2017, where you released Fracture and you picked on
Yeah,
ARIA charts. So what was the
yeah.
process like creating that? And how was that different from your first one, Felon?
That was different because we started working with um, Vera Blue, and we also worked with another. The writer of Fracture was actually Allies. We jumped in the studio together as well, and I remember that it was really difficult. That song took so long to flesh out, but the moment of like the eureka moment for me was literally done in 5 minutes. I was like, I remember just being so stressed out over just the frustration of not being able to write something compelling. And then I looked at my watch and I realized I had 5 minutes left before I had to pick someone up from the airport. And that pressure sort of laser focused me into just finishing it somehow. It's so hard to explain because musicians and artists talk about being in the flow, and that flow like bit me so hard that 5 minutes disappeared and the song finished. I couldn't explain it.
Yeah.
And I remember just sending it over to Fletch, and I go like, I figured it out. This is it. This is the chorus. This is the main chorus. This is what's gonna get everyone dancing. I was never more confident in my life. Even now, I haven't felt that confident. Like when Fracture was done, I was like, if this doesn't get us like into the big leagues in Australia, I will quit. I know it. I feel it in my core. So I went dandy. I picked up my friends at the airport and then worked on it for a couple more just to tweak it. And yeah, when that EP came out, festival slots started rolling in. We were playing festivals every week. We were so exhausted.
And what was it like that year? Because I mean, I think you also were developing a live show for you guys and you spent half a year on that. So what was that? It
Yeah,
sounds like a crazy year for you guys.
yeah. So 2017, when Fracture came out, and then Triple J put it on high rotation, and then I think Nova played it a couple of times. So mainstream radio started playing a couple of times. We started seeing it on YouTube compilations, like FIFA compilations, and uh, dancers from around the world were dancing to it on YouTube. Fletcher and I like maybe it's time to revisit the original Slumberjack idea was to be a band. Maybe we can stand out now. So this time we have the money. This time we have the team. We have the resources. So then we revisited the idea. We took 6 months off, built a PC, like a tower PC with the right graphics card for it. Had like a studio setup, which looked more like a coding lab, and didn't look more like a studio, looked more like a lab to design this live show. So mood boards were flying around, graphics were flying around, and eventually I was very inspired by Porter Robinson's show called The World's Live Show. And at the same time, I was also really inspired by Justin Timberlake's Future Sex Love Show. And that was those two combinations that created the live show. Yeah, 6 months of visual work saved us about $100,000. Because if you get someone to create visuals for about an hour, it would easily be six figures. So Fletcher and I are like, maybe we can spend, $3,000 to build a computer and a lot of time to catch up and basically throw ourselves into the deep end with visual animation and work on that with the music. So while I'm working on music right here, On my left will be Fletcher working on the visuals, and we'll be trying to put a show together with the catalog that we have. And then I think it was at the end of the 6 months, we got a call from Splendor in the Grass, and they're like, "You're on the bill. We know the festival's in 2 weeks, but you're a late announcement. We want your live show. You're playing 8 p.m. Saturday, which is like the prime time, and it will be broadcasted through Triple J nationwide." I was like, "Oh yes, let's go!" I was so excited.
Amazing. So, like, I was wondering, because it's 6 months, did you guys never doubt the fact that you would take off? Because it's a lot of investment, in terms of time and resources, rather than you going
No,
out.
because again, like I said, I was never more sure about Fracture.
Mm.
When this EP came out, I was so sure. I was like, I could have invested my entire life savings in it, and I could be fine.
And then
I can't explain it. I would not tell anyone to do that, though.
Yeah.
It could be disastrous. But for me, I was like, Fletch, like this is it. Like every artist have a couple of milestones. This is our first real one. Like,
and Fletcher was okay. Fletcher was okay with it.
Yeah, he was like, okay, I trust you. Like, you look so sure. That's the thing. Like, he has moments like this too, and I have to look at him and go, like, if you believe in this, then I'm up by your side, because that's the point of synergy.
Yeah.
So when I met him, the idea was that, like, he didn't know managers existed. He didn't know agents existed. I did all that research beforehand already. When I met up with him to write the first Slumberjack, crappy EP, that's not even the real EP. It was like I told him, like, we need a few things. We need a publicist. We need lawyers. We need agents. We need managers, and a label. And he's like, what are those? I was like, well, you're about to find out. Let's do a lot of homework.
So you can't actually do your work without all these people around you?
Right now, the operation would be too big. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm currently trying to finish an EP, which could even turn into an album, because it's quarantined still, sort of. I can't leave Australia, and there is talks between me and Fletch that we might want to write an album. It's about time. It's another milestone to take, and at the same time, because every song is written with different musicians, you need lawyers to deal with the publishing splits. You have artwork being dealt with, and I can only give my direction. Now I don't have the time to sit down and do art, because I want to do music. I can't be looking at graphic work, because that, as much as I love it, that's not my core. Yeah. And even when you're touring, you have tour managers to book flights for you, to route the different cities, the timing. So it's a lot more complicated than people just think. You fly to New York for a show, but if I have to go to New York and Utah the next day, and then Tokyo, and then Shanghai, like, we need to find the best, efficient, cost-effective route to get us on time everywhere else. At the same time, you have to schedule sleep as well, because this is why a lot of musicians get mental issues like depression and anxiety, because you don't sleep well, and you get thrown on stage, crazy adrenaline and dopamine, pulled back into the hotel, told to sleep, although you're still, like, high frequency in the brain, and then wake up and repeat again, So it's their job to balance that for you, and you can't do that all by yourself.
And what was your way of coping? Like, the first time you went on a big stage, what was it like? And do you remember that?
Wow, yeah, I do. I remember it. It's kind of crude. Were we allowed to swear here?
Yeah, we just got.
It's kind of, because we're nerdy kids, me and Fletch. Our first big show, I walked on stage about to appear. I could just peek from the stairs on up to the stage, the amount of people, and then Fletcher's like, we just can't hide behind the decks anymore. Look, and always look down. You have to look at the crowd and be like a rock star, like your favorite, pop singer or rock star they go on the stage and smash a guitar and all that, antics, right? So we just keep telling ourselves, for the next 1 hour, we imagine we have the biggest proverbial penis in the room. That was the joke backstage. And then from there on, we're like, okay, like this, I can't, like, let's just internalize this. In the next hour, I am basically, I don't know, like David Bowie, or freaking Freddie Mercury, or Diplo, or Skrillex, anyone in our scene. And we kind of just, that feeling went from fear and stage fright and anxiety to confidence, and then eventually just fun. It just became so much fun to give love to the crowd and then receive it, you know?
Yeah. And was it difficult to tap into that Freddie Mercury in you? Was it a
Very
process?
difficult. Yeah, I mean, look at us. When we're playing classical music, everyone's keeping quiet.
Yeah.
You know, you hardly look at the crowd. You look at
You're very
piece, you know?
serious.
Yeah, very, very serious. Yeah. So,
So
you gotta do that.
what was
And
your
then
trick?
like my trick. At first, my trick was to imagine everyone was in their underwear. So then I laugh at them, you know, and then I imagine them all being drunk anyway. So anything I say and do will be received with an applause because I know how drunk people are. It's quite kind of funny. So I just assumed that. And then eventually that just became, you know, straight confidence. I can go from like, besides the recent show now on the peak of our tour before COVID, it was I could go from the hotel into the car, super calm, walk on stage 5 minutes before the show to thousands of people and not break a sweat.
It's incredible.
And that was like, then I could just turn. I remember just going like, oh, okay, oh, I'm so tired. I had 5 hours sleep, and then, all right, give me the mic, and then Slumberjack logo comes on. I can know the cue, and everyone just cheering, and I walk on stage, and I just change into a different person.
And what was the schedule like for you at the time?
It was hectic. Holy crap! It was um, when we did that Splendor in the Grass 2017 tour. We basically did a sold out national tour into Splendor in the Grass, straight to Chicago the second we were done. We had one night, flew to Chicago, did Lollapalooza, did not sleep, had to take the next flight out to Los Angeles, drive like 6 hours to Fontana and play at Hard Summer, and then fly back to Australia again for another show. So it was, and then that almost continued. Not in that intense 3 days, but every week we were in a new country. Like we were touring China, and then we played Bali, we did Singapore for. It was just so I can't even remember. I can pull up our calendar and I'll be like, I don't remember that city. It became such a blur, you know. It was really difficult. I just remember lack of sleep, constantly being tired, and then you stop writing music because you're so tired. And that's where I realized like we can't tour that much. We got to have cycles, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is a good time for me. COVID is great. It's like a forced break.
Yeah. So you guys were like performing with like Vera Blue and Troy Boy. So those were huge and clearly caught up with you. So is that why in 2018 you guys realized that, you know, you were just struggling to create something new and you had to take a break?
Yeah. So the idea behind that kind of spawned like the Sarawak EP, that we were touring so much that I wouldn't say I was like clinically diagnosed with depression, but I was musically depressed. You know, I felt like we were only touring and I wasn't writing the best music. I wasn't proud. I was writing music that was like kind of catering to the crowd. I knew what people liked already. At that time, I had the experience to know what to write, and and there wasn't also the music industry kind of felt stagnant at the time, and there was just a lot of recycled sounds. Like dance music became again, it went into another dark ages where everyone's making the same shit. I was like, this is so boring, and I also blamed myself for not being able to innovate. I wasn't at my beginner mind. I wasn't what the monks call the beginner mind. I wasn't looking at music with like a fresh eyes. I wasn't doing Felon. Felon opened my eyes, right? And then this became my normal. Fracture opened it again, and then it just stayed stagnant because we started touring so much off the success of Fracture. We were on a tour bus for 3 months. I lived in a bus for 3 months, and then another one for 2 more months, flying around a lot. And then eventually I told Fletcher, I was like, we need to just go, like leave LA. Like this is too much. Like if we want to keep doing this long term, I can see how this could turn us into, like, I can now see why rock stars go to drugs to go to sleep. because they can't, because they're so stressed and anxious about the next piece of art they're going to do. Because most musicians and artists judge themselves off their latest work only. Like, you're only as good as your last work. Like, at this moment, no one cares about Fracture. I'm only as good as my last EP, you know? So that stress is constantly there. So we realized we had to go back. I just want to go to Kuching, back to Kuching again, and sort of reconnect with why I did music in the first place. Kind of find my gratefulness in what I have. I was living in Hollywood, but I did feel Hollywood, you know? That was kind of like a almost like a waking up call. All my life, I wanted to leave Kuching to go to Hollywood. And then when I was there, I wanted to go to Kuching. Like, what the hell is going on?
And what was it like going to Sarawak? Because you talked about the idea of identity, which I really resonated with. I mean, like, we both come from a really
Yeah.
small town, our whole lives,
Mm-hmm.
we just want to get out. But then you actually went back. And what was that
Yeah.
experience like?
And the experience was kind of like, it's conflicting, right? It's so conflicting because, yeah, like you said, I almost hated it when I was younger. In a way that I always looked at it like, why me, man? Like, why am I born in this? Oh, at the time I called it a shithole, but you know, it made us who we are, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If I was born in the Hamptons, I probably would be a very different person. But I was like why put talented people in Kuching just to watch it die? And almost like at that moment as well, like I became I wasn't religious as well. I was like, this is why there's no God. I was like, this is like, who would be so sick as to put like talented people like you know, there's a lot of talented musicians in Kuching and they're still stuck in Kuching, you know? But this time going back, I kind of used it as a utility to reconnect with myself as a kid, to realize how good I have it, and I remember sitting in my old bedroom where I was trying to, you know, play didgeridoos and like play the erhu, and I realized sat in the same chair that my parents had never threw out, and I just meditated there on a little bit. I just sat there and realized like I still like music, you know, I still love it. You know, we were touring so much that I almost felt like it felt more like a job than a passion. It kind of turned into that, and going to Kuching made me realize like I've worked my entire life for this. Like, this is just a reality. I just got to get good at it and manage the expectation a little bit better, you know, and take care of myself. So started like eating better, sleeping better, meditating, drinking more water, exercising, reading, like, you know, self-care stuff that you see on Instagram so much that I used to loathe. And I realized like, you know what? Fine, I'll do it. Like, and then it kind of helped. And then that's where Sarawak was written.
Yeah.
We
And
went there for 8 days
do you have a
and wrote
vision
this
in terms
together.
of do you have a vision in terms of why you were going there? Like, I'm going to be there for 8 days. This is what we're going to be doing. Or were you just going there to just
Yeah, it was
disconnect?
some sort of like we didn't really decide that until it was really last minute. We're like, we just need to leave LA. We'll go back to Perth for a little bit, pack our shit, and go back to Kuching. And Fletcher will come with me. And then we're like, why not turn this into an experience? Like, why not just sit down and relax? Why not we fly a documenter, a journalist, a video journalist, come and document the whole thing while we're writing and while we're kind of finding ourselves in the experiences that we go through while crafting this EP, recording the sounds. Um, and yeah, then at the end of that, we're like, wow, we have, you know, music. So that became the Sarawak EP. Went through different names, but we decided to call it what it is. We wrote this in Sarawak, so Sarawak EP.
Yeah. And I think Sarawak EP also because you collect a lot of interesting, like the sonic impulse from Fairy Cave to use.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So the fairy caves, we used a balloon we pop a balloon in the cave to it's called an impulse response. So we got a mic that was capable of measuring the milliseconds of reverberation. So the second it pops and the second time you hear it, which is the reflection. And not just the time, but the texture of it. And you can import that into a computer and reverse engineer that. So then I can now record every sound in a virtual fairy cave. Also, the song we have with Ikali called Closure, that had the gamelans and the gongs in it in the longhouse in the beginning and the end, and that almost inspired the melody. We sort of heard that melody there. Yeah, just a bunch of percussions are just peppered throughout the EP. We didn't really sample the sape. We did, and as much as I like it, a lot of people tell me this, and I know this might piss a lot of Kuching people off, or Sarawakians, but sape there's nothing I can do about it. I can't put it in an electronic track. It's a beautiful instrument, and I think it should stay that way. It should stay as an acoustic, haunting lute and not be bastardized and butchered into an electronic track. A lot of people ask me to do it, and I refuse. I tried, and it doesn't sound pleasant. It does both genres and instruments a disservice. Some people or music are just not meant to intermingle, you know? So I kind of had that executive decision they made for the world.
Is it the first time that these kind of unique sounds were actually heard on the world stage?
Yes, actually. People ask us of like the percussion sounds and the jungle sounds, and I think the texture was still quintessentially Slumberjack, but it wasn't the sonic. A lot of people thought the sonics was because of Sarawak, of the sound of the EP, but it wasn't. It was just the mental clarity we needed from Sarawak. It was more esoteric. It wasn't very literal, you know. But a lot of people thought we went there, got the instruments, got musicians, but we had to explain to them it wasn't. It was just we needed to get out. We named it Sarawak because it was completed there, you know. We took some of the records that we had and tried to find some solace in not having to tour and, like, you know, not having to figure out. LA was super expensive and Kuching is so cheap, you know. We were basically kings when we were there. Our money went so far, so there was no stress. Fletcher was staying in my house, and we just wrote music. It was awesome.
Yeah,
it's a great time.
And then you guys also went to the Longhouse. I think it belongs to your adopted family.
No, that wasn't. We couldn't do it at my adopted family. So, my godmother Nikki introduced me to another longhouse to go to. So she sorted that out for us. Another 6-hour drive. It was in the most. That van had no suspension, no shocks. It was 6 hours of just the worst. And at the time they were building the Pan-Bornean Highway, so it was just terrible roads. And then an hour on boat on Batang Air to get to the longhouse, and that was the craziest experience. We recorded a bunch of sounds there too, so that was where the gamelan and the gong came from. And there was the screams and the shrills of like the men when they're doing the Iban dance. And we also were privileged and honored enough to see the severed skulls, real ones too, not the ones on display in the museums. These are real heritage ones kept in a literal rucksack. We had to pay the guy. We had to pay the chief of the longhouse like 20 ringgit to talk about it.
So
and he demanded a cigarette as well. Huh?
Why would they keep the severed heads in a rucksack?
Because at the time it was a proud thing, but I think he was really conflicted because he was part of the guerrilla war. He was a soldier, and he took these heads for survival. But he was really dark about it. He didn't want to really talk about it. We kind of had to coax him and tell him that this is okay. This is more for the Western world to learn about us, and sort of gave him the onus of like, if you want to talk about it, you can. Eventually, he came around to it. And then he showed us we couldn't touch the heads because it was sacred. And yeah, he just told us he took the heads in the jungle. Just it was himself and versus the world. I was like, this is really heavy and dark stuff, but what a story. And he showed me the barang, the machete that he used.
Oh wow!
And there was blood stains on it, really old, like decades old, super dirty. I didn't want to touch it too. And they attached the hairs of the victims at the end of the night, the barang. So it's at the what do you call it?
It's like a trophy.
The handle, yeah.
Handle.
No, not really. It's apparently to respect the dead as well. Like you were enemies in war, but then you should respect that, and they can protect your future too. It's kind of like this weird, some sort of relationship they have with the dead and their enemies. That like I've taken your life now, you protect me and I'll protect you. It's like a weird, and because at the time they're very spiritual.
Yeah. Perhaps we should clarify as well that not every Sarawakian is like this. I mean, I've never seen a spearhead. It's not common.
And a lot of people think, when I tell these stories to people, they go like, really? That's your family? I was like, no. I was like,
totally different.
Yeah, I was like, it's just because we live in a very eclectic like place. Sarawak is very eclectic.
Yeah.
You have the rich kids, and then you have the tribal kids, and everything in between.
Yeah.
So and this is my way.
And how did Fletch find all this? It must have been quite a shock since his first time.
Yeah, he thought it was pretty weird. But I thought he would, because he's such a germaphobe. He's a germaphobe, and he's also what do you call that thing when you hypochondriac, right? And I remember every experience. I was actually pretty impressed. He braved through it. We went to go to Jonkar Falls, and it was snake season. There was a lot of snakes at the time, but I didn't tell him. I lied to him. It's kind of funny, because if I did, we wouldn't have gone there, and he wouldn't have, and it would have ruined the documentary. So I told him it was fine. We were caught in torrential rain. There was like a flash flood. I think a week after our shoot, someone died at Jonkar as well. Yeah, it was a terrible time to be there, but I didn't know why I thought it was a great idea to go shooting there. And then he had worms, the sago worms for dinner. We had anaconda meat. We had wild boar. We had turtle, like the freshwater turtles, snapping turtles, and just a bunch of wild stuff in the longhouse. And Fletch just ate it. I was very impressed.
Yeah, and you also participated in the tattooing as well, tattooing practice.
I did.
What was that like?
It was part of the. It's actually, the idea was from our videographer. He was like, I realized a lot of the men had tattoos. Why don't you do it? I was like, oh, I never had a tattoo until that moment. I never wanted one. My mom always asked me to do it. She thought it was a cool idea. And I was like, no, I don't want to be, this is again me disassociating myself with Sarawak. I'm like, why do I need the tattoo when I don't want to be here anyway? I was like a kid, pretty young. And then I realized like, well, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe I'll try it. So I got traditionally done as well, like hand tapped. Took 5 hours for both the bunga terong to be put into my shoulders. And since then I got a bunch more. So it kind of like started like a little thing that I like to do now.
Yeah, I think the bunga terong has...
I get a new tattoo in almost like a new country.
And I think the bunga terong has a specific meaning behind it as well.
Yeah, so the meaning is bajalai. Basically just means that it protects the bearer of the tattoo, and it gives us strength to venture away from our home. So the reason why it's on the shoulders is because a backpack, the straps are on those things. So that will give you strength to hold the weight of whatever life throws at you. So that was kind of meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And almost in a way that like I've come to terms with, who I am. Just a Sarawakian boy trying to make it out in Hollywood. So why not? I did it.
So after that experience, how did you feel, and how did you get back into the real world?
After that, I was just kind of reinvigorated, really. We went back to America. We started touring again. We toured with Ikali, and then we had our own North American leg. We announced that as well. We came back to Australia. We did 5 upgraded shows. We basically doubled our capacity from our last sold-out show, the Fracture Tour. And then from there on, went back out to LA again and try again. And that's where, after that tour, we wrote the Black and Blue EP.
Yeah, and it's something that you did with Corey Enemy, who is the producer and writer for like Lady Gaga and Katy Perry. How did that happen?
Corey Enemy has been a fan of us since our 2014 days on SoundCloud too. We just never hear about it.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I got onto his music in 2016, and this was before LA. I started playing his music in our sets. We make sets and put it on radio shows. And then I realized, like, when I came to LA, we got a tweet, and he was like, I just saw that you guys are in LA on, Instagram or Twitter. Want to come and meet me? I was like, oh, okay, sure. I was like, I'm a big fan of your work. Then we took an Uber. It was like an hour, 30-minute drive from LA to Malibu. I think it was an hour. I can't remember. It's really long. And remember the band that used to be really big, Lifehouse?
Yes.
Yeah. I went to his house. That was where I met Core Enemy. He had a studio. So Jason, he was actually gardening out in his own mansion, and I was there. And he's like, "You guys are Slumberjack, right?" I was like, "What?" "Yeah." And I thought he was a gardener. And he's like, "Yeah, man, come go in. Corey's inside." And I talked to Corey, not knowing who Jason Day was again. And I started talking to Corey. I was like, "Dude, like, this is awesome, man. Is this your house?" He's like, No, it's Jason's house. The guy you met outside." I was like, "Oh shit, I thought I was a gardener." He's like, No. You know the band Lifehouse?" And I realized the entire studio was plastered with platinum records.
Wow.
And to this day, we know the song, "'Cause It's You and Me." You know that song? Yeah. And he came to us, and he wanted us to convert that into a bell sound on audio, so he can reprint that on vinyl to give to his wife, and that's what he wrote it for. And so we had a relationship there briefly, and yeah, it's pretty crazy. That was like my first touch with like actual, Hollywood stardom.
And how, because you have done all that and it's really incredible, and then we soon proceeded into the whole COVID situation. So how has that transition been like? Because I understand you were going to go on a North American tour and the world got slammed with this, right?
Yeah. So at first it was kind of a shock. I was like, shit, like, I don't know when we're going to recover from this. And then I realized it's kind of like a blessing in disguise that I thought I was stuck in Australia, but I'm really lucky to be here because we had our first post-COVID show last weekend in Perth, because Perth and Queensland, and I think except for Victoria and a little bit on New South Wales, are pretty good with the infection rates. Also, I think we haven't seen a case in days, and same as Queensland in like a week, and South Australia for 50 days. So we got this pretty much down packed, and we're pretty good with our finances too. So I wasn't really worried about, not playing shows, not having money. But right now I kind of feel like this is like a forced vacation for me. I get to live my life as a normal person again. I couldn't really have like a relationship with, girls, or like, my girlfriend at the time, we had to break up after 7 years because the touring got to us, So basically, like, now it sort of gives me like a chance to sort of glimpse at life like a normal person again. I was so nomadic. I couldn't form deep, meaningful relationships with people because I would see someone for 2 days and then I'm off. I'll see someone in New York and then I'm going to Shanghai, and then I'm in Korea and then I'm in Singapore. Like, when does this end? And so now it kind of gives me like the chance to sort of meet people again and actually connect with my friends and family and call them, have time, have a routine. And now again, after 4 months, I think, in quarantine, I'm starting to feel like the kid who just wanted to write music again. So I'm really ready for the next chapter. And I think the next chapter could be an album.
Amazing. And do you feel that COVID's impact will have a permanent influence over what you're going to be doing, just in terms of perhaps relationships?
Well, I think so. As scary as it sounds, I think so, but what can we do? I think the best skill anybody can have is adaptability and survive, and then from there you can thrive.
Yeah.
So I tend not to think about the future too much now, but we have safety, measurements in place. I mean, worst comes to worst, right? My dad could be right. I could just go back to doing banking, but I had a good run for music. But at the same time, things could look better. I'm obviously hopeful for a vaccine, and if this album goes well, if I can write an album that's compelling enough, it could launch 2021 into a better year.
You
So
talked
this
about
is almost like a good meditative year for me.
you talked about an album. So how do you find like producing music with Fletch while in quarantine? Is it very different from how you were doing it before?
No, actually, so we don't live together in Perth, which is, I think, was the key to reconnecting with our past beginner's mind. When we started touring, we started living together, I guess, because we're flying together, same hotels. And then eventually, as we got more money and we got more prominence in the music industry, the only upgrade was we get two separate rooms. And then we moved in together so we could have more work, we could do more work. And then we've been living with each other for like 4 years now. And it's stressful. We have a good relationship. We have a very healthy, balanced work ethic with each other. He understands there are certain personal things I want to do, and when he takes vacation, I'm not like, hey man, I'm the one working here. We know it's unspoken, and I'm so grateful for that. But for Perth, we just like, you know what, maybe let's try living apart. It's kind of like breaking up with someone, isn't it? But it's not. It's just been a mature conversation. And we just meet up in a studio. So we got a studio in Perth, and that's where the Slumber headquarters is. So we go in probably like 4 to 5 times a week, and the rest of the time we work from home, because solo time is important too for what we consider true, meaningful, deep work to get in the flow. You can't have someone else in the room. You just need to be in solitude, like insulated from the world.
Yeah. And not just creating music, but how are you keeping in touch with your fans? Because your work is very much about being in a crowd and creating that big crowd.
We started streaming for, I think, the last 3 or 4 months. We started doing virtual festivals. We actually set up the live show, have like 5 or 6 cameras around, and then broadcast it to the world. I think we've done, I think it's like 10 or 12 since.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good considering we've been in lockdown for 4 months. That's about 16 weeks. We've done 10, 1 every 2 weeks almost. So we're still keeping in touch. We have formed a Discord group and a private Facebook group for what we call the Slumberjack Sleepers, which is our fandom.
Yeah.
And we talk to our fans there personally. People will upload stuff and go like, this is the artwork I made for you, Morgan and Fletch, and we'll comment on it, and we'll give them some sort of like a life behind the curtains.
That's the demo submission stream, right, that you guys were doing.
Yeah, so fans can also, musicians can also, submit demo and let us listen to it, and we'll give them feedback. Also give them a sneak peek into, like they are the first ones to get the news. Like, hey guys, we're actually thinking about, maybe writing an album. That's an idea we're toying. And everyone's like, oh my God, like, but they're the first ones to hear it. We want to kind of give back to them because they supported us, in this time. So it's a great little thing that we have.
Yeah. And I wonder, like, because you've mentioned it before, an album, for those who don't know, what's the difference between an EP, which you've done, and an album?
So an EP is called an extended play. They call it an extended play because usually an EP has 1 or 2 main singles on it, and the rest are some sort of like a accompanying tracks. An album is just basically it's called an LP. So LP, it's called long play, and it just means you need to have 10 to 12 tracks in a body of work. An EP is a shorter body of work, so for 3 to 6 tracks, and then a single is just a song. It's just the term used in the music industry. But an album is some sort of, to me, it feels like a milestone. It's like a shedding of your skin, like a emerging from a cocoon moment for every musician. We always put the idea away, but recently we're like, let's do it. Like, it's time.
So what's the process of creating an album? Do you have an overall vision for the album? You start creating songs?
So the idea is like, I don't feel like an album. I think different artists approach it differently. Some artists look at it as I'll start with a grand idea, like a grandiose delusion to be fulfilled, and then they work towards that. For me, I feel like every piece of music for me is just a snapshot of my life and Fletcher's life. So I'll just write whatever, whatever I feel at the time, because that's true to me. I don't want to craft something that I think I should, and then when I don't get it, the expectation was so high that I just get depressed if I don't get there. So I'll just it's just a snapshot of what I hear in my head, and I'll put it down onto digital paper. And hopefully, if I write 40 songs, maybe 5 of them will be good, or 10 of them will be good, and we'll keep doing it until we have a body of work that sounds consistent, that is a true representation of how we feel at the time, and put that out. And hopefully it resonates with the fans, and that's a gamble every time.
Yeah. And I wonder, for those who are very interested in doing what you guys are doing, like, if you had an advice for them, if they want to start today, what should they do?
For budding musicians,
Yeah,
that want to break into the mainstream, like, it's really difficult. At first, I used to be a big proponent of follow your dreams, because it, to a lot of people who listen to this podcast or would look at my trajectory, they would think Morgan followed his dreams, right? Because he played music in high school, he bartered with his dad to do music, and then he just kept doing music. But I think it is ever increasingly important to know that it's more complex than that. I could have been accountant, like I said. I could have been a filmmaker. It was just collecting. Like I read this book called Cal Newport, So Good They Can't Ignore You. That book, and I firmly believe in what he says. It's about career capital. So if you want to do music, you have to be very honest with yourself that you really want to do this, and first of all, I have to ask yourself, are you good at it genuinely? It's not enough to just want to be, but are you willing to put in the work? Many people want to be rock stars, many people want to be professional athletes, right? I mean, the idea is great, but are you willing to put in the 8 hours of training, Ronaldo put through? Are you willing to go through 14 hours of busting your ass playing piano, producing music late into the night while sustaining a day job? The idea is sweet, but the work is not. It's far from that. It's grotesque. It's ugly. It's a lot of sweat, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of anxiety. I think people just need to ask themselves the hard questions first, because it would be wildly irresponsible for me to tell people to chase your dreams, screw yourself over, because it could have gone differently for me. What if Fella never came out? What if I never met Mr. Carmack? It's a bunch of luck and trading off time for valuable knowledge, and then hopefully I can work on that and work on something that people like.
yeah.
I think it's important just improve on the skill. If
So
you
do you
really
have
want to do it and you're committed to it, like, get good.
So do you have any advice in terms of people doing this, but then surely there's a point where you're not finding that success and you need to turn back and just give up? Do you have advice in terms of how you decide when that moment is?
Well, I mean, it's hard because at the moment, Fletcher and I we realize for the past 7 years, that moment is ever so clear all the time. You can just quit and have a normal routine in life. That seems very, very sweet for me right now. A lot of people go like, it's so good, man. You work for yourself, you stick it to the man, you're not part of the rat race. But then I look at them and I go like, I want to be part of the rat race, man. You know how nice it is to wake up to have a routine and be home at 5 and have dinner at 6? And you have a family, you have people you can come home to. Like, we don't have that, but the point I'm trying to make is that, like, it's good to check in with yourself, and maybe the idea that you've constructed in your head is not it's not all that. So, like, at the time, like right now, if I really think about it, I can quit, but I'm not gonna really shed a tear about it. I just get good at the next stuff I'm doing. So it's really important. If you're not where you want to be now, then maybe it's time to reassess. But then if you still like you have a little bit more pizzazz in you to try to get the next milestone, fuck it, try it. I would say gamble for it, because if you're responsible, you can always bounce back. And for me, thank Christ my dad made me do and finish and graduate. That
And
is
so,
always my fallback.
and so for those who know that they want to give this a shot, are there any practical steps that you would advise them to do in terms of like maybe lessons they should take or equipment they
Yes,
should buy?
absolutely. So, most important thing, YouTube will be your best friend. YouTube is the best teacher because you're learning from actual people that have done it. I don't really believe in going to music schools. Um, I have friends who run music schools, but you can go to music schools to some sort of give you like a foundation, but I would say it's a tiny foundation. It's like a really thin piece of glass. It's not even, you know, and then your real skill comes from you finding your own sound, which means you need to start copying all the artists that you want to be first. Literally, outright plagiarize their shit. And you find it's not possible because you always inject your own flavor, right? You're not a robot, you're a human. And from there, your skill would really start skyrocketing because you'll start asking the right questions while you're copying. Because when you're copying, you realize you can't sound like them. So then you ask the question like, why is my music not as loud, not as punchy? Why is my bass not as firm? Why is my synth lines not as epic? And these are the questions that are very important to ask yourself and not ask the teacher, because the teacher has his own flavor, right? The mentor, the school has their own syllabus, and music and art cannot be confined into a syllabus. I think it's important to just start now and don't procrastinate. Every waking hour that you have that are free, that is not, um, you know, you're not obligated to a family and going out or studying or working, you need to put it to music now. Accumulate those 10,000 hours. That's what I'm saying.
And is there any common misconception about what you do that you would like to clear?
Yeah, I think my parents still think, well, not anymore, but they used to just think I just press buttons on stage, not knowing that I write my own records. There's a big difference between touring DJs and electronic musicians than your club DJs. We don't play clubs. Club DJs have it's called a residency. So you get like a contract with them, you play for the next 6 months for a fee, and you do 4 or 5 hours every night in the same club, or 3 4 nights a week. But for me, ours is more fan-based work. I'm not not like a jukebox. People come to see me to listen to my music. So for our live shows now, we play 90% original Slumberjack music now. And the final goal is to play 100% Slumberjack music. Because I want to be a band. I want to be known for my music and not, like, we're not DJs. We're only made to DJ because it was the only medium at the time to perform electronic music.
And is there anyone you happen to look up to that you aspire to be?
Oh, tons, like they went from idol to friends, to colleagues, to people we work with, collaborators. There's Alice in Wonderland, from Australia. What So Not is a good friend of ours. Skrillex, obviously, like we met him a couple times. He actually gave us the support on his blog years ago as well. And just like these guys, we look up to a lot. And actually, we started dabbling in the world of film. So doing game composition and film composition, doing work on pro bono just to get our foot through the door. Hans Zimmer, Ramin Javadi, who did the Westworld and Game of Thrones. What's that? What's the other guy that did the? I can't remember their names. There's so many. Yeah, we look up to these guys, and basically, there's another guy called Brian Tyler, who's a composer for F1. He did Avengers, but he's also a DJ and electronic music producer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he plays under the name Masonic. Yeah, but he's Brian Tyler. So like, it's crazy to see that. So I want to do that.
Yeah.
But he's doing this for years.
So it sounds very much like collaboration is something that's very, very important for you guys. So how do you normally make those connections?
You either could cold email people and hopefully they've heard of you before, or you can just tell them, or you can meet them at a party. I think that's usually what happens with this. is that it's a small step at a time. As your music gets more popular, you get invited to more prominent parties, or like, you get to meet better people, and people kind of trust that we can benefit off each other. It's like synergy, that you have your fans and I have mine, and we can merge that and have bigger fandom and be more successful. To approach that, I think it's important to just write good music first. Other musicians need to hear your stuff and also like your work, to be impressed with your work, and then your opportunities will be pretty abundant at that stage.
Yeah. And final tricky question: do you think you have the success you have if you was doing coaching?
Absolutely not. 100% guarantee you I will not have what I have today if I was in Kuching. It's just not. It's such a young town. It's too small for anything to have critical mass over the world. The tipping point. Like we don't have enough support. Also, the infrastructure in Malaysia isn't supported. It isn't supportive for the world of musical arts outside of our own little Malaysian bubble.
Yeah. So if someone was serious, then they should go somewhere else, like Australia.
They should try to leave. Yeah, America, Australia, UK. Screw it, even Korea, actually, if you want to do K-pop.
Really?
Yeah,
but isn't
so
it
we've dabbled
hard
in
to
that as
break in?
well.
Isn't it hard to
Very.
break in?
Super hard. It's even probably harder than dance music, because it's a very businessy corporate structure that they have for music there. So like it's quite manufactured. So we write beats and instrumentals for K-pop singers to put their vocals on, but you write 4 or 5, and then they will give it to another writer to sing on top, and then once they like the song, then they make the artist sing it. It's a very manufactured process, but I find it fascinating too. I like the business side of K-pop. It's one of the biggest genres in the world, even in America. Yeah. BTS, Blackpink, they sell out arenas in America. It's crazy.
What do you think their secret is?
I don't know. I think it's about the glam, the Hollywood glam that people like, the bright lights, the makeup, the really expensive looking music video, really catchy songs. Like it's almost like a gimmick in itself, but it has taken its own little form of, I don't know, like people are fascinated by it. Yeah. Like we're talking even kids that would usually frown upon pop music. They were like, this is so cool to watch. It's like it's a show, it's entertainment. It's not just music.
Yeah. And is there anything else that you'd like to share that we haven't covered yet?
I think I covered everything, really.
Yeah.
I think I did. I guess I'm just thankful for being a Kuching boy, really. Yeah. It made me who I am. It gave me the motivation that I need to take on this career, Yeah, it just shaped me who I am, I guess. If I had it any easier, I don't think I'll be the person I am today.
And I normally close up of my interviews with 3 questions. So the first question is, do you think you found your why?
I think I have, but I think I have multiple whys. Like, I think I have. I just, the why I'm doing music is because I want to leave Earth when I die with a legacy. It's my form of a Horcrux. It's my immortality token. That is my why. I want to make sure that I am remembered. As narcissistic as it sounds, I feel like it's a lot of people would like to have that. Historians do work. Knowledge workers. Everybody wants to have an impact on the world, and I think this is my little contribution. Just good music, I hope.
So that kind of ties into my second question, which is, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? So what kind of remembrance would you want people to have of you? Just good music? Good music,
great work ethic, and just a hardworking musician, that's pretty much great music, great art.
And what are the most important qualities you think people should have to succeed in your field?
Being able to filter out the doubt, being able to filter out what's not important and what really is. That's a skill to have. Also, the skill to be able to learn. I think we're not taught that enough in school. We're taught to study and remember stuff, but we're not taught the skill to learn. Like how to learn is an important skill that people should have in any field that they want to be in, because that's the true life starts after university.
Yeah.
You know, so if there are kids that are listening to this podcast, if they're doing PM, is that even a thing? PMR, UPSR?
I think they've changed the name. I can't even keep up anymore, but it's something. It's still there.
It's something of that. At the time, SPM, I thought that was the biggest thing.
It was,
but it's not. If that stresses you out right now, you're listening, don't worry. Really, it's not really that big of a deal, because your life can get better. It's a C in biology doesn't mean you can't be a biologist. It just means you're not doing good in standardized biology.
Very true. And what is the best way for people to connect with you and follow what Slumberjack is doing?
Instagram at Slumberjack Music, and Twitter is just Slumberjack. And I'm sure if you Google Slumberjack dance music or just Slumberjack, you'll see us. Apart from the Canadian camping company.
Yes, that's the first thing that comes up when I Google search. I have to put music behind it.
So annoying. But apart from them, we're the second one.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Morgan, for your time. Really enjoyed
Thank you.
this.
Thank you for having me. It was great.